Want to welcome Marcus Weedon to the Caterer.com Careers Hub. Marcus, tell the good people a little bit about yourself.
Yes, I'm Marcus from Milestone Recruitment. I started working in hospitality quite some time ago, and done operations up to being a restaurant manager and bar manager of a pub before starting my career within recruitment. So I spent 10 years in recruitment agencies, recruiting for hospitality and catering, before moving on to Carluccio's in recruitment there. Spent about 6.5, 7 years there, then went to the Ivy Collection as the head of recruitment, before then deciding to set up my own business to work with brands that potentially I would want to work with, and helping people find those great jobs within great businesses.
That's amazing. Some very cool brands in there.
Yep, really good.
A little bit of love. So 6.5, 7 years with Carluccio's. That's obviously a place that you found a happy place.
Absolutely, very happy.
Nice.
So very fond memories and made many great friends.
The joy of this industry, isn't it? Some of our best
Absolutely.
friends, the people we work with.
Yeah.
Amazing stuff. So Marcus, today we're going to talk about finding the right job for you. Not necessarily you and not necessarily for me. I think hopefully we're both in the right job, but we're going to help some people to really kind of ascertain what's key for them. And I think our starting point for this is going to be all around kind of the CV and the CV process. And from watching you on LinkedIn, you've been giving out a lot of advice and a lot of help to people who are really benefiting from it and sharing some really kind of good understandings. So let's go for it. So I guess our starting point when it comes to CV skills, what should my CV look like? What am I trying to do with my CV?
For me, a CV should be simple, really easy to read, nicely formatted. I think bearing in mind we spend about 5 or 10 seconds looking at a CV, so you really have to sort of consider what people really want to see on your CV as well, and how quickly that people can read it. So I think it's really important to make it not so detailed, not overwritten, and like I say, really easy to read. And I think the way you need to make it stand out is by not adding too much design or content to it as well. Otherwise it becomes then very hard to read.
So you're not a big fan of those kind of infographic style CVs?
I don't think it's necessary. When you're applying for a job, what's the most important thing? The most important thing for me is the content of the CV, not necessarily the beauty of adding color or different pictures or links or anything like that. It's just the content that people are interested in reading. They want to know about your job. They want to know what your sort of personality is like and your personal attributes, what your qualifications you possibly have, or the things that you get up to in your spare time.
Seems reasonable. So I guess to really build on that, as a recruiter, so when you were back as an in-house recruiter, if you were advertising a role, how many CVs would you expect to look at for maybe a role of a general manager?
I think probably at the time 50, 60.
Okay.
It depends on the location, obviously, as well. So if you're looking at London, definitely you'd get those kind of numbers. Anything outside London would be a little bit less. So yeah, so we get to see quite a few CVs. And I guess when you go into a restaurant, you're looking at waiter roles, then the number of CVs you're going to get through, that will be massively different. So
it's a really good indication of why you want to try and keep it as simple and as clear and as concise as possible. If you're seeing those numbers, if you're having to go through the kind of the pretty design ones, and I've seen some amazingly designed CVs where you think that's absolutely a work of art.
Yeah.
But is it going to do the job that it is supposed to do? Possibly. Yeah.
I always remember when we did graduate recruitment, because we used to have a graduate scheme which ran for about 4 years that we set up, 4 or 5 years. I always remember there's a CV that came through that was actually designed as a menu. And they've done it because they were applying to Carluccio's. They designed it in an Italian style, like our menus would have been in the restaurant. And that has been the only exception to the rule that I normally work with. But I always remember that CV. And I remember that it made that impression of me that I actually wanted to get her in. So it's kind of a bit sort of goes against what I've actually just said. But majority of the time, I'll probably say 95% of the time, the CVs that will stand out for the right reasons are the ones that are done in a Word document. It's easy to read and it's nicely sort of formatted, bullet pointed as well.
So I think it does highlight the fact that if you are going to go to the trouble of doing that, make sure it is specific. So that feeling of you looking at that CV, seeing that menu in that Italian style, that kind of, and it feels like it would fit within Carluccio's kind of values, ethics, and all that kind of thing. Well, that it made sense. You know, if that person would have gone and done in maybe in a cartoon style, it would have completely fallen short. So if you are going to do it, personalize it in a big way.
Yeah, absolutely. You can certainly tailor a CV, whether you are going to design it or whether you're going to actually do a Word document. You know, you still can tailor it. You can still add, you know, go on their website and look at keywords that they keep popping out on the website and potentially add that into your CV as well, because that potentially will add value to the CV and make those words pop out to the recruiter.
So how would you go about making that work? So if you go to their website and you think, right, okay, you're looking through maybe their values, you're looking through, as you say, the language that they're using, running all the way through it. How would you then go and track that so it drops into your own CV?
Well, probably it only works if you do actually have the same values as the company, which is obviously going to help. So I think the detail is done in your research for the businesses that you actually want to work for. I don't think it would necessarily work within businesses that say, let's say you've chosen 5 companies that you want to work for and use their keywords within your CV. So that could be done in the personal profile, or even the way that you manage people and the duties of the job roles that you've been in. I guess if you apply for 10, 15, 20 different companies, I highly doubt that your values are going to be exactly the same for every single company. So, you know, you have to pick and choose which businesses you do actually want to work for before doing something like that.
That makes perfect sense. So I guess that's, again, that leads into another element. It's kind of finding that cultural fit for you as a the business that you're applying to. How would I be able to do that? So what sort of tips have you got for me to be able to work out what would be a great cultural fit for me with a specific brand?
I think it's just drawing upon conversations that you've had before. So if you've had appraisals or you've sat down with previous managers and they've given you feedback as well. It's not just about the peers that are above you giving you feedback. And it's really understanding your skills and the values that you have, so you can then identify the different companies that you want to go and work for. So if you consider yourself to be a nice person, so for example, when I was at Carluccio's, I would look for nice people. Okay, so when we say nice, it's about nice people that customers would say, oh, he was nice or she was nice. So if you're that kind of person, then automatically you know that you're going to fit into a business because that's what they would look for. So, you know, it's really about understanding the words that they use when you go onto their company's cultures and values pages that they have on the website these days, and just really assessing, okay, so what has people told me about what's important to me as well. That's obviously very, very important about how they treat people, but really understanding from what other people have told you in the past, so you can use that information. So if you've got appraisals that have been written down before, go back and look at them, because there'll be information there that will actually give you those tips.
So that kind of self-awareness piece, you know, when it comes to looking for the right job for me, understanding yourself is really the starting point. Understanding your own personal values, what is absolutely key to you, what are the must-haves, what are the would-be nice to haves, and what are the, wow, that's a red flag and I can't be a part of that. Becomes really powerful, I guess.
Definitely. And I think as well, when we talk about, you know, your personal profile, that's an area where you get to put all this information in. So, you know, as an exercise I do with people when we're looking at their CVs and have been doing for the last sort of 5 or 6 months, is to write down what you're really good at on a daily basis, and what personality traits you have, and then potentially put them in some order so you can build a personal profile that way, rather than just writing the cliche words that people normally write. So write something that's unique about yourself. So it really makes you stand out that you are unique, rather than being the same person that sends the CV with the same information on. It shouldn't be sort of regurgitated, because that doesn't make you stand out, unfortunately.
No, sadly not. I've had a couple of different interesting conversations with people around the kind of the personal profile element of the CV, that kind of personal statement. What are your views? Do you think there's a place for the personal statement, or would you just kind of disregard it?
I think there is a room for it massively. I think it's one of those areas where we talk about cover letters and things like that. This is kind of the area where you write the information on, so you don't necessarily need a cover letter. So if you're writing a paragraph which has got 5, 6, 7 sentences, it's giving them someone the outline of what kind of person you are to also work with. So it gives the person that's reading the CV a lot of information about yourself without going over the top. Because if you keep it a short paragraph, there's going to be enough information there for them to sort of assess you what sort of personality you have and whether you're going to fit their business.
So I'm going to put you on the spot now, Marcus. I'm not expecting this. So if you were going to write a personal statement about yourself for your own CV, just to give people a bit of an indicator about what they should be kind of.
So my personal profile would probably read something on the lines of: Marcus is an experienced and passionate hospitality and catering recruiter who is self-motivated, dedicated and committed, and has highly developed interpersonal customer service and relationship management skills. Strong decision maker who is well accustomed to working to high standards, tight deadlines, probably budgets as well, and has a successful track record in external and internal recruitment, working for various businesses as a head of recruitment for small and large businesses.
So you've ticked some boxes there because you've hit some real competency points, but you've also hit some personal traits.
Yes.
So you've given an understanding of the skill set that you're going to bring to the table, but then also that you describing yourself as an individual, as a person.
Yeah. Exactly.
And would you write it in the third person, or would you write it in the first person?
I've only done that because that's how I write CVs for people. Yes. So I'm doing that as if I was writing myself a CV as a recruiter. So I think if it was a job seeker, I'd go I, so as the first person.
Well, I mean, it sounds like a simple question, but it's one of those things that you're never quite sure, are you? To kind of, how should I be presenting this?
No, I think in the end of the day, this is your CV. So, you need to sell yourself. So it should be I. So if I'm writing a CV for somebody, and I do this as part of the process that I've been going through the last 3 to 6 months, is that I write a CV for somebody as if I was going to send it to them. I said, look, this is your CV. I'm doing it for you. It's for free, but you need to adapt it so it is your CV.
Yep.
So it's not coming from me, it's coming from you.
So I guess, again, what I'm getting from you there is that the starting point of writing this kind of personal profile would be to look at maybe your top 5 skills that you think, yes, this has been successful, and I know that I'm good at these areas, but then also think of your top 5 traits that you're very proud of yourself as, that you think really do represent you in the best way possible. And then use those kind of 10 things to really be able to write a kind of focused and deliberate personal profile.
Absolutely. It works a treat as well. I mean, I've been doing this exercise for the last 3 or 6 months, and it really makes people understand what those are as well, because they probably never really thought about it, and they've just been given this information, or they've seen it on someone else's CV, and they've kind of used it. And I said, look, have a think about it. Take it 24 hours to think about it, and then work out what those things are. Then we start putting it into a sentence.
I love that. Yeah, I absolutely love that. I think it's you made that great point that this is a personal sales tool for you as an individual, and you want it to represent you in the best way possible. So taking that time and sort of 24 hours or so thinking time and reflecting time to really be able to pull that together and just think, okay, I'm comfortable with that. Would you share that with other people before you kind of sent it out on the CV to try and see if it kind of matched up to what other people's perception of you was?
No.
No,
I think for me, it's about making people think. So I normally go back to people and say, CV looks great. This is what you could change, and let them have a go at it first. And then they come back with what they think they should change. And I said, look, here's a CV template. Okay, and let's have a conversation about this. Because I think there's some areas that you could improve. I'm not saying the CV is rubbish. I'm just saying this is potentially what a CV should look like. And I know there's various CV templates and people do it differently. And there's no necessarily winning CV out there. But I think in some cases, more thought needs to be put into how you portray yourself on a CV. So there are areas, and this is one key area that I do work on with people.
So I mean, you've been offering a lot of help and advice to people on LinkedIn and kind of sharing your knowledge. What would you say were the kind of the top three things top three most common things that people kind of maybe have to change on their CV once they've sent it through to you and you've reviewed it for them? It's really the top three most common kind of mistakes that people would make with CVs.
I wouldn't necessarily say the mistakes. I think they're just areas that can be improved. I like saying weaknesses. What are your weaknesses? I'd rather turn around to someone and say, "Oh, what are the areas that you want to be developed in?" There's a more sort of positive spin that you can put on things. And I think in terms of some of the areas that people could improve more would definitely be the personal profile. I think it would be as well, getting the CV in the right order. Because some people decide to do, I saw a CV yesterday where they had a personal profile, then they had achievements, and they had skills, and then they got to the job on the second page, the last job. Yeah. Or another CV I saw the other day where education was put right at the top, then the personal profile, skills, achievements, then work. Okay. And I think from that point of view, looking at so many CVs, I know the first thing that most recruiters and employers want to see is what the last job was. How long were you in that job for? What was the job that you were doing? What were the duties? What were the achievements inside that job? And for me, the last job, whether it's 1 year or 2 years, that should potentially be taking up the first half page, 3/4 of a page, to really demonstrate to somebody, okay, this is what I can do. This is what I can offer. And then the rest of it is not immaterial, because there's still skills and stuff that you've learned before, but you don't necessarily need to write as much information on those jobs. And then you get to your education. Then you could get on to different skills that you have, whether it be languages or computer systems that you've used. But one of the things, and this is kind of one of those things where I don't know whether people agree or don't agree with it, is about having not a personal profile, about having something interesting, hobbies and interests. So, do you have it or don't you have it on your CV? And I'm a great believer in it should be on that, because it demonstrates, one, that you're not a work robot, okay, and that you have a personality and you do stuff outside of work. You don't work all day long and go to bed and then not do anything in your spare time. And there's some key things that people can pick up from this area that you put on your CV. And it could be telling people about your passion for food, or your passion for people, that you like to socialize and be friendly with people, or you've learned new skills, whether that's doing like learning judo or taekwondo or something like that, or you're a power lifter. I've had that on the CV before. And it creates talking points in an interview. So if you're somebody that is a nervous interviewer, or hasn't been for an interview for such a long time, maybe you've been in a job for 24 years and you're going out there looking for your job for the first time, you might be very nervous. And if you're a good recruiter, you're going to ask questions to make somebody feel comfortable. And this would be the starting point for me in an interview when I'm interviewing somebody, is drawing on that information, possibly something I have in connection with them, to make them feel a lot more comfortable.
Yeah, so, I absolutely love that. And I'm in complete agreement with you. I lose count of how many interviews that I've kickstarted by talking about those interests, because for me, certainly in hospitality, I think you can tell through people's hobbies and interests, are they already demonstrating that care gene that is so important to us? Are they demonstrating discipline? So you talked about kind of people taking up taekwondo, powerlifting. All of those things demonstrate discipline, which is a wonderful thing, and one of the tools that we're looking for to see, and one of the traits that we're looking to see within potential recruits. So I'm in complete agreement with you. If we were high-fiving in a room, Marcus, we'd be high-fiving.
We can still do it. Okay, high
five. So I'm with you there. So let's think about some of the bits and bobs that are asked around. Should we be including? So one of the questions is, should I be including references on my CV? What do you think of that?
I don't think it needs to be put in the CV.
Okay.
On the basis that people shouldn't, or employers shouldn't be contacting people without your permission anyway. Okay. And you haven't got a job yet. Let's say you haven't got a job yet. So they don't need to contact them. So you're just kind of wasting space on a CV by putting them on there.
Yeah.
If you get offered a job, or if they want to find out anything about you in the interview process, then the employer can ask you for that information. So for me, it's not necessary.
Cool. If I've had a gap in my CV, and maybe I've had maybe 3 or 4 months where I've not been working, what should I be doing with that? Should I just try and kind of tally the dates up to maybe trim that gap out, or should I just be owning that?
Don't lie. Simple
answer, isn't it, Marcus?
Don't lie. The problem with lying on a CV and adjusting the dates, you'll get found out. So just be honest. So many times I've interviewed people and I've questioned dates and they've maybe not added the dates out correctly. They've overlapped for some reason. And there's an interviewer that does a very good funneling. You're going to get found out. So just if you've got a gap in your CV, just write down the dates that you're unemployed, or if you've gone traveling or something like that, just write it on the CV.
So just
explain it. So you're answering the question before it needs to be asked.
Perfect. And then last one, should I include a photo on my CV, Marcus?
I don't think it's necessary. It creates some unconscious bias.
Sure, Marcus, I'm a very handsome man. Look
No, it shouldn't make any difference.
Shouldn't make
any difference, mate.
I disagree, Marcus. If this came through, I think I'd certainly be guaranteed an interview. Maybe, I don't know.
No, going by the advice I've been giving people that people have had to see pictures on their CVs is not required.
And that's it, isn't it? So those last 2 bits of advice, this is about keeping it as simple and as clear as you possibly can do. Make it relevant, make it pertinent to what you've been doing, to your experience, make it clear around your skills, your abilities and your characteristics and traits, and don't be over volunteering stuff that just does not need to be there. So the photo, no. Despite the fact let's just put it leave it as a surprise.
Well, that's the beauty of it, isn't it? The surprise when you get to see people,
exactly.
Isn't it?
You don't want to ruin anybody. Take that away from
not we should be judging people anyway, even when they are sat in front of us.
Absolutely. Amazing. Well, that's a good solid 20 minutes on CVs, and I think there's a whole load of useful stuff in there, Marcus. Thank you very much for that.
Really. I was going to say there is one additional thing. Don't waste space on your CV.
What was that? Sorry.
Don't waste space.
Don't waste space.
Because don't waste space means like having a picture on there or doing spacing out your CV, leaving lots of gaps because you're trying to make it 2 pages. Just write additional information that is pertinent to the job that you're applying for, that is relevant in your duties that you've done before. So you can build the CV up, use the space on the CV to make a really good CV without making it too wordy, obviously. That'll confuse people.
If it's a 1-page CV, just make it a powerful 1-page CV so that it draws the eye in.
Actually, I just helped a waitress and a waiter that sent me a CV each. They worked in the same hotel, they live in the same house. So I kind of they sent me the CV separately, and I kind of worked out, oh, you live in the same house. Let's just do one email. And they had 2 pages, and they didn't need to have 2 pages. So we actually got their CV down to 1 page. And so we weren't wasting so much space because they had lots of information on there that wasn't necessary. So we broke the CV down massively. And so it came out onto 1 page, and it looks so much better. Now they're going out using the CV to apply for jobs, whereas they weren't having any luck before because the CV looked terrible.
And I guess one of the things we have to think about, I think you touched on it earlier, that if you're applying for jobs as front of house team, then there's a good chance there's a lot of people applying for those jobs. So I spoke to somebody the other day who was going to go and look at 100 CVs that morning. Got to make sure that CV just isn't overpowering, isn't detracting away. So that idea of keeping it concise, keeping it to the point, makes perfect sense.
Yeah, simples.
Top draw. Amazing stuff, mate. Thank you very much.
No worries. Thank you.